This is Trial Transcripts Exposed by Crime and with Heather. Raw Room reads with my commentary. Let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Crime in Court with Heather. This is the Menendez brothers' trial. We are reading through their retrial of the homicides of their parents, Kitty and Jose. We are on the defense's case. Erik Menendez is still on cross-examination by the state. Before we get into it, I want to make a quick announcement, which you guys are all going to get tired of hearing. But there has been some updates. I made some updates to the membership perks. So let's take a look. I'm just going to go through them really quickly today. I'm going to make a more in-depth video on what all the perks are in case you guys have questions. But for now, I'm just going to do a very quick recap here. So, this month, middle of the month, when perks and stuff, memberships were expiring and things, I started these new changes, so they're in effect. I'm sorry, I'm tired. I'm groggy this morning as I'm recording this. So, I updated these mid-May, so these are now in effect. So Core Insiders, 99-cent membership, and you guys all get an insider case file, which is a Google Drive link, which has all of my case files on all of the different cases that I talk about, and it has PDFs, transcripts, things like that. There's going to be a post weekly, which is an Ask Me Anything forum. You guys can ask me anything on those posts. I'll usually put up a topic in what it'll be about, and then you guys can ask me anything. Featured member comments. If you are a member, you might get your comments. If you make a comment on the channel, you might get them read out in future videos. Wall of Fame. That is anyone who has membership will be listed according to their designation. So I have 2 tiers and an additional like special membership. So I'll explain that in a minute. So we have the featured member comments, and then Wall of Fame, you'll be listed according to whatever membership you have. So then you'll have a weekly insider tip. I'll give you guys a fact or a tip about some of the cases that we listen to, and then hopefully, it'll engage in some conversation. The whole point of all of these is so that you guys can engage more in the channel and get more recognition. So I think these are some better changes for the channel. I don't like to have things be like exclusive, and I don't like to have, I don't know. I feel like I'm missing out with memberships when I can't afford memberships or whatever. So I'm trying to make it more that it's optional if you guys want it, but it gives you guys a chance to engage more in the channel. And of course, you guys all get badges and emojis. The next membership tier is going to be Justice Insiders. You get all of the things that I just listed, including member shoutouts in every video. This may change once we have too many Justice Insiders or above. We will have we will have member shoutouts verbally. I will do. But in the future, if it gets to be too much, it'll be like rolling credits. So if I'm not going to list out hundreds of people on the show eventually. But for now, while it's smaller, manageable, we'll do this. Priority case suggestions and episode dedication. If you suggest a case, you guys will get oh, I just skipped over one. That's okay. I'll come back to it. If you guys, when you're a Justice Insider, you will get a special link to a form where you can submit your case suggestions. And if I do take your suggestion, you will have an episode dedicated to you. And that's what this will look like. Each episode that I dedicate to a member who suggests a topic or a case, they will get this at the beginning of that video. So back to the perks. I skipped over founding member. I didn't mean to. So the founding member is a limited time membership, Anyone who joins from now until June 30th becomes a founding member, and that is a designation that you get to keep forever. There is a limited time badge, however, because unfortunately, due to YouTube's limitations, I can't change that. But you get to remain a founding member on the Wall of Fame forever. Priority case suggested, I just said that. You can connect with me via X or text. You'll get that information once you become a Justice Insider. If you follow me, I'll follow you back on X. And a monthly thank you video for all of the Justice Insiders. And that includes founding members from now until June 30th, those who um, sign up or join membership. So here I'm going to go over the founding members. This is your member shout out. Thank you guys for being members. Toyota Girl 67, SLB 2948. May the Force be with you 4313. Jessica Wienand 6079. Mrs. Apples with a Z, I like it. 207 or 2007. Butler 89833. Brooke JF, all of you, thank you very much for your memberships. Jen P773. Boom Chico, wow, wow. Number 1 and Kendall B5757. You are all founding members of Crime in Court. So thank you all for your founding memberships. At this time, as you can see on the screen, all of their handles are on the screen. If you become a founding member, if you join as a Justice Insider, you become a founding member, and that will stay with you as on the Wall of Fame. Let me show you what the Wall of Fame looks like. So there's a PDF link in my bio that shows the where you are. So like I said, you will be listed under if you're a founding member, a Justice Insider, or a Core Insider. At this point, we've started fresh and blank, so we have just founding Justice Insiders at this point. All right, so that is a recap of the membership updates. Wanted to get you guys updated on that. So let us get started with why we are here, which is part 58. Yeah, 58 of the defense's case in chief. Erik Menendez is on the stand during cross-examination. We're going to continue where we left off. And we are now, that was the other thing I wanted to say, was that we are now heading into 1996. So if you remember, we left off in, I think it was December 21st, 1995. We are now in 96. The trial still has several weeks to go. We're about halfway, at least halfway, maybe a little bit more. All right, so that's why we are ramping up these episodes so we can get through them a little bit faster. So let us get started here. So the court says in the case of the People versus Menendez, the defendants are in court. All counsel are here. Good morning. Is there something you wanted to talk about? Mr. Levin says, yes, Your Honor. Today we're asking for some time with the court so we can discuss the issue regarding the motion that has been filed regarding the videotaped testimony of Lyle Menendez. There are some matters we need to bring up with the court, and it will take some time. Why is Mr. Levin making the argument for Lyle? Because he's not Lyle's attorney. I don't know. That's confusing to me. Ms. Abramson says, we need to do it today, Your Honor, because we need to prepare these tapes and get copies to the court and opposing counsel, and they're rather time consuming. So we're asking if we can set aside maybe a half hour today at most, or at some point. The court says, okay, we'll see what opportunity arises. That doesn't sound like he's going to accommodate. Mr. Levin says, another matter, a personal scheduling matter. On Friday, February 9th at 9, I've been ordered by the Ninth Circuit to be present to give an argument in an appeal that has been filed in one of my cases, and I'm asking the court to be allowed to attend that hearing. The court says, what time again? Mr. Levin says, it's set at 9 a.m. I've asked for priority, but I noticed that my case was last on the calendar for that day, and their instruction sheet indicated that they normally conduct the oral arguments in the order that they're posted. The court says, all right, does that mean that you could be unavailable all day? No, I think it would be the morning. All right. But I will check and try to get priority. And if I'm first up at 9, I could probably be here. It's Pasadena by about 10:30 or so. Also, Ms. Abrams indicates it's a possibility that I might not even be necessary to be here. The court says, okay, let's deal with it as we approach that day as to how we'll handle it. Because maybe Mr. Levin wouldn't be the one. Right now, he's in cross-examination and he's the one doing direct, so he has to be here, he has to pay attention, he has to, rebut the things that they need to rebut. Because Ms. Abramson has a conflict. She cannot do it this time because of being accused of asking the therapist to, like, I think it comes into the rebuttal about Ms. Abramson potentially asking the therapist not to use certain notes or something. I don't remember exactly the specifics, but it has to do with that. And then that made her like a witness or something. And then they to punish her, she wasn't allowed to like examine the Erik, which I think hurts this case a lot because Erik and Ms. Abramson had a very like tender, caring relationship, and she was able to almost like bring out that human nature, the human side of him, the suffering, the trauma out of him, that in a way that like Mr. Levin just can't, just and hasn't. And I think that really hurts the case. And then we don't have Lyle either, so a lot of things are different in this trial. It's a very different trial than the first trial. Even though a lot of the testimony is similar, the structure of this trial is very different. All right, sorry. Let's continue on. So the court says uh let's deal with it later. Anything else before we're ready to proceed? Okay, let's get the defendant back on the witness stand, please. The jury comes in. The court says the jury is all back in court. Being good morning, being ladies and gentlemen. That's weird. That must be an error or something. That's a weird that's a weird phrase. I've never heard good morning, being ladies and gentlemen. Happy New Year's to you all. We're ready to resume with the trial. The defendant, Erik Menendez, is still on the stand. I'll remind you, you're still under oath. The witness says, yes, Your Honor. He is, he resumes the stand. The court says we're in cross-examination. Mr. Menendez says, or I'm sorry, Mr. Conn says, Mr. Menendez, when you were at the top of the stairs on Sunday, August the 20th of 1989, and your brother Lyle Menendez came up to speak to you after your father had closed the door to the den, you had a brief conversation with your brother Lyle at that time. Is that correct? Words were exchanged quickly. And in that brief exchange, or at that time, you knew that when you had entered the home, your brother, Lyle Menendez, had gone into the den when you went into the dining room and then the foyer. Is that correct? Right. Okay, so you knew that he had an opportunity to see what, if anything, was going on inside the den. Is that correct? Objection calls for speculation what he knew. Court says it goes to his state of mind. It's what he believed at the time. You can answer the question. Erik says, I suppose so. I don't remember thinking about it in either way. So, when your brother Lyle Menendez came to the top of the stairs and had a brief exchange with you at that time, did you ask him at the time when he said it was happening now whether he had seen something going on inside the den? At that time, I was consumed with what my dad had said in terms of him coming up to my room, and that's all I could think about was that they were going to do it now. That my dad was going to come up to my room now. He said, "Don't even worry about that. It's happening now. Can't you see it's happening now?" So you didn't ask him at what time, if while he was inside the den, he saw guns being loaded? I wasn't. Here he goes with like the really weirdly worded questions. So you didn't ask him at that time if while he was inside the den, he saw guns being loaded. I wasn't in the frame of mind to think about that. And when he said it's happening now, you didn't ask him why it was happening now. Is that correct? No. Did you conclude that he had seen something inside the den? No. I thought that he had just been, my dad had, what had just happened inside the foyer was enough for me to realize that it was happening now. And when he said that, and I could see his face, I knew that something was happening at that moment. Did you tell your brother at that point that you would meet him at the car? No, I just said I've got to get to the car. Did you previously testify that you told your brother Lyle Menendez at that point in time that you would meet him at the car? I don't know what I testified to before when I told Lyle I need to get to the car. Mr. Conn says, directing counsel's attention to volume 99A. Mr. Levin's like, 99A? None of them have that. He says, it's page 16680. The reporter says, Your Honor, yes, I know. Let him find it. Do you have that volume available? Mr. Conn says, it's volume 99. Mr. Levin says, it looks like it's in volume 99. I just need a moment to check. Ms. Abramson says, what's the page number? Mr. Conn says, 16680. How big are these binders, man? Line? Mr. Conn says 9 through 13. No objection, says Mr. Levin. Mr. Conn says, do you recall being asked the following question and giving the following answer at the first trial? Question. So you went up and you got your gun from your room and you and Lyle went back to the guest house. Answer. No. I told Lyle I'd meet him at the car and I went and got the gun and went to the car. Witness, or sorry, Erik acknowledges that yes, that's right. That's what he testified to. So was your testimony at least at that time of the first trial that you told your brother that you were going to meet him at the car? I told him I've got to get to the car. Meet him, or I just assumed I was going to the car. I said it. That's true. Which is it, Mr. Menendez? Did you tell your brother you were going to meet him at the car or not? Yes. And the reason why was it that you wanted to meet your brother at the car? Actually, no. You want to take it back? I don't remember saying the words, I'll meet you at the car. The only thing I remember saying is, I've got to get to the car. I've got to get to the car. I don't remember saying, I'll meet you at the car. Do you have a reason to meet him at the car, Mr. Menendez? Right. I assumed that he was going to be there. Why did you assume that? Running away from him, I knew I had to get to the car and I thought Lyle was going to be there. I may very well have said it. I just don't remember saying it. Why did you assume that your brother was going to the car? That's what was in my mind. That's what I believed. I'm asking you, why was that in your mind, Mr. Menendez? Because that's where the shells were. And you needed the shells, is that correct? Yes, right. And you didn't know whether your brother had ever put buckshot into his gun, did you? No, he may very well have. I didn't know. So you assumed he had not. Wait a minute, but Lyle has to get his gun from the guest house. So it would make sense that they would have to meet up outside. And his car makes the most sense to meet there. Even if he had shells or not, whether he had shells or not, if Lyle was going to the guest house, they could meet outside and come in together. Right? So the states, I don't know. I don't know where they're going with it, but well, I do, but I think we can debunk it. So you assumed he had not. No, I didn't assume either way. I just had told him to get to the car and I ran off from him. What made you think your brother would go to the car just because you were going to the car? I don't remember. I may have said, I'll meet you at the car. I don't remember those words. He may have said, I'll be there. Anything could have been said. I just know I just know that's where I was going to see him next. So it was somehow acknowledged or decided possibly that that's where they would meet. So then when you got to the car, you unloaded the 2 rounds of birdshot. Is that correct? Right. So you know when you went into that den and shot your parents to death, you did not use birdshot. Is that correct? I know that I unloaded 2 rounds and I was scrambling to put more rounds in. I believe I put in only buckshot. And this is important because there were rounds of birdshot in mainly Kitty, but possibly Jose too. And to your knowledge, you fired only 5 rounds of buckshot in that room. Is that correct? Right. So it is your testimony, Mr. Menendez, that for the birdshot wound to your mother's left cheek, it was your brother Lyle Menendez rather than yourself who fired that shot. Do you mean, do I know that now? Yes. Yes, Lyle testified to that last trial. I'm asking you what you know, not what Lyle testified to. Well, I only know it because that's what he testified to. Duh. Uh-huh. And as far as like he got you there. He's like, uh-huh. And as far as the bird shot to the, well, you know that because you're telling us you did not fire birdshot. Is that correct? That's also true, says Erik. Okay, and because you didn't fire birdshot, you know that the birdshot to your mother's left shoulder, which also went behind her left ear, another birdshot that was fired at her, you did not fire that shot either. Is that correct? Whatever birdshot was fired, I didn't fire. So, by logic and uh what's the word I'm looking for when you eliminate the other possibilities, deduction, I don't know. By deduction, you can conclude that it must have been Lyle, right? And the shot to the back of your father's head, the contact wound to the back of your father's head, did you fire that shot? No. Lyle testified that he believed that he was the one that fired that shot. You know that Lyle Menendez fired that shot because you never went behind the sofa to fire a shot. Is that correct? Right. You told us you were in the middle of the room at all times firing the shotgun. Between the door and the middle of the room is where I was. You never went behind the coffee table to fire shots at your mother when she was down on the floor near the coffee table, did you? No. Now, when you were out at the car reloading your gun, you completed reloading your gun before your brother Lyle Menendez got out there. Is that correct? I believe so. I don't know if he had gotten there just at the time I was finishing or just after. Okay. And while your brother was out there, did you see him loading his gun? I can no longer remember whether he was loading his gun or not. I just remember thinking, hurry, we've got to hurry. I don't have a visual image of that. Well, you remember seeing your brother come out and standing alongside you at the back of the car. Is that correct? Right. What was he doing? I believe he was putting shells into his gun, but I don't have an image of it. What were you doing while he took the time to do that? I was telling him to hurry, hurry. How many times did you tell your brother to hurry? I know I told him once. I don't know if it was twice or 3 times. Well, it took him some time to load up the buckshot, is that correct? Objection, argumentative, overruled. I don't know. I don't have the visual memory of him loading, so I can't tell you how long it took. And all you remember doing while you were standing out there was saying, hurry? Right. And whether one of you said anything about driving, neither one of you said anything about driving away? No. Now, when you went inside the den, who was the first to enter the den? I burst through the den doors. Why was that? I just believed that if my dad got out of that den before I got through, through the doors that I was going to die. And so I was running as fast as I could through those doors and I got there before Lyle. Which door did you go through as you faced the doors, the left door or right door? I believe I went through the middle. I'm sorry. I believe right through the middle. The doors push open. So you pushed open both doors yourself. I don't have a memory of whether I pushed them both open or just the left one. Were you looking behind you to see how far your brother was? No. You did not know that your brother was right behind you at that point? If he wasn't right behind me, I wouldn't have known at that point. It wasn't even in my mind where Lyle was. You wanted your brother to go inside the room with you, is that correct? Yes. And that's the reason why you were telling him to hurry, is that correct? Right. And when you went inside that room, you began firing at your parents, is that correct? I saw my dad. Yes, I almost immediately started firing. Did you tell us that the coffee table inside the room was not the way that it appears in the photograph? I'm sorry, I don't understand your question. Yes. Do you remember saying anything about the way that coffee table appeared in the photograph was not the same way that it was when you were in that room? I believe so. I believe that there was testimony about that as well at the last trial. That the table shifted, it was off center. It wasn't lined up, with your couch like how you would normally, have it perpendicular. It was a little askew, and I think that was because Kitty fell into it or onto it or whatever. And because if I remember seeing the photographs and hearing testimony that one of her legs was wrapped around there was like a shelf underneath. So there was your top shelf and then there was a shelf underneath and her leg was like bent and draped over it. So that's what I remember from the testimony. If I'm wrong, let me know. So I'm asking you about your belief. I'm not asking you what was said or wasn't said in the last trial, Mr. Menendez. Let me show you what has been marked as 329. Here's a photograph depicting your mother and your father and the coffee table. Is that the way the coffee table was when you burst into the room, Mr. Menendez? It's possible to see the angle from there, or it's impossible to see the angle from there. It was essentially parallel to the couch, like a normal coffee table. You're saying that that coffee table was fully parallel when you burst into that room? That's my memory. It was. That's how it was always kept in the house. Uh-huh. I'm not asking you the way it was normally kept. I'm asking you about the time when you burst into the room. Is that the way that it was? Mr. Levin says, objection. It's argumentative. The court says the question clarifies what the purpose is of asking the question, so overruled. What was the question? I'm not asking you the way it was normally kept. I'm asking you about the time when you burst into the room. Is that the way it was? The witness says, I don't have a memory of it when I burst into the room. I just have a memory of it when I got back into the room later that night after we had left, and I just remember it being parallel to the couch. Oh, so maybe the investigators moved it. If it was parallel to the couch after the shooting. Mr. Conn says, well, let me show you. And did you move the coffee table at any time that evening? No. Did you see your brother Lyle move that coffee table at any time that evening? No, he did not. Now, where was your father in relationship to the coffee table when you burst into the room? I remember seeing him next to the coffee table in front of the sofa. Let me get another exhibit. I'm showing you the exhibit that has been marked 24. Mr. Levin says, Mr. Conn, the court says you want to straighten up that plastic. Mr. Conn says, showing you what had, why did Mr. Levin say that Mr. Conn? I don't know. Mr. Conn says, showing you what has been marked as 24. Now you say that you remember the coffee table being parallel to the sofa. Are you saying that as you look at this exhibit here, the left side of the coffee table, would have been closer to the sofa and therefore parallel, or that the right side of the coffee table was pushed further away and therefore parallel to the sofa? No, the left side, as we look at it, was certainly much closer. The coffee table was nowhere near an angle like that. It was fully or virtually parallel. How much closer was that left side to the table? How much closer was that left side of the table to the sofa? My memory was that it was no further away than the right side was, but I mean, I can't be exact. I might have seen degrees of it, but that's certainly not right. The way that it is in the picture, I guess. Now, and where was your father in relationship to that table? Directing your attention to this exhibit, if you would identify for us on the exhibit where your father was at the time that you went to that room. Right around here, number 14 was. Right around where number 14 was. Uh-huh. And while he was facing you at the time, or he have his back to you? I thought he was coming toward me. I'm asking you if when he was coming toward you, he was facing you, or did he have his back to you? I assumed that he was coming toward me, that his front was toward me. How do you not understand that? How could you be coming at someone with your back towards someone? It makes no sense. Are you saying that you weren't able to see whether he had his face to you or his back to you? What I'm saying is it happened so quickly that I saw him right there, what I thought was him coming toward me, that I just started firing, and after that, I don't know what happened. Again, I'm asking you what you saw. Were you able to see your father's face, or did you see your father's back? I don't remember seeing my father's face. It was more like it was dark at that point, and so it was like a silhouette of his dad. Well, you told us before you told us before we broke for recess that when you opened the doors to that den, the room flooded with light from the foyer. Is that correct? It must have. The light was on in the foyer. And it wasn't very dark in that room because you had the light from the foyer and it was on. Is that correct? The room was dark. The television was throwing shadows across the room, but I'm sure that if I had stopped and looked, it would have been light enough for me to see him. It's just that I saw him and I started firing that I didn't stop. And so I I don't know I don't remember seeing his face. How far forward did your father come as you said he was coming toward you? There wasn't much opportunity. He was right there. He was right where that number was, where he's pointing to an exhibit. And then I thought he was coming toward me. And so I started firing. I mean, it was a second. When you say you thought he was coming towards you, are you telling us that you were making assumptions, or are you telling us that you saw your father coming at you, towards you? I'm telling you what I believed at the time. I have no reason not to believe it now. Mr. Menendez, I'm not asking you what you believed. I'm asking you what you saw. Mr. Levin says, objection, Your Honor. It's one and the same. The court says, not necessarily. There could be a distinction between the two. Mr. Conn says, Mr. Menendez, did you see your father come towards you? I don't remember independently now. I just have the emotion to reflect on. You have an emotion of movement, an emotion of fear, an emotion of him coming toward me, and that's what I'm relying on more than the visual image. And that's exactly what someone with trauma would say. Someone who was traumatized would be remembering the emotions that they were going through at the moment and not the specific details necessarily. And in some cases, because you're in a traumatic situation and you're already in that fight or flight PTSD type of situation, your memory of the events might, just to protect yourself, you might block them out, some of the memories. You might, maybe he, to protect himself psychologically, his brain decided to block out any images of Jose and Kitty before their deaths. you know, it's very possible. So you have an emotion of movement? No, an emotion of fear, of him coming toward me, and that's what I'm relying on. How is coming towards you an emotion? My dad being in front of him, me during the being in the room and seeing him there. It's just the whole thing was frightening, and that's what it's the emotion that I'm relying on. That's what he remembers is the being fearful. Isn't it true, Mr. Menendez, that you never saw your father come toward you? Whether I saw him coming towards me or not, I don't think matters very much. It's just what I'm telling you I saw. Mr. Menendez, the jury will decide what matters. What I'm asking you, objective, argumentative, ask what the court says. The comment of counsel is stricken. Let's refrain from making side comments and just ask the question. Mr. Conn says, Mr. Menendez, did you see your father take a step in your direction? I have no idea if he took a step in my direction. And you have no basis upon which to conclude, based upon your visual observations, that your father was ever coming towards you. Is that correct? I don't remember any that no. It doesn't matter because he was so afraid at that moment that he knew his dad, like whether it was true or not, he knew in every cell of his being that his dad was going to come after him and hurt him in some way. So because he was so used to it. He knew the cues. He was hyper vigilant. He knew all the cues that when your dad was mad, you knew to be fearful, you know? So he was in that state for about a week at this point. Um, Next question. Now, when you got inside the room, what were you looking at? What was I looking at? I saw my father and my mom. That's the only thing I remember. What were you looking at as you were firing? I just remember seeing the fire of the gun as a red mass in front of me. Remember, it was dark, so the blast from the gun lit up the room. Who were you pointing the gun at? I was just pointing it straight in front of me where they were, in their direction. They weren't standing in the same position, they were standing in different positions, isn't that correct? Objection, it's vague. Sustained. Was your mother and father standing in the same position or different positions? Objection, vague as to. The court says sustained as to what you mean by the question. Mr. Conn says, how close was your mother to your father? She was, I don't know how many feet it is, but a few feet away. And were you pointing your shotgun towards your mother or towards your father a few feet away? As I was running through, the door swung open and I remember seeing them. I just started firing. The gun was in that direction. I wasn't purposely firing at either one. I was just firing. Are you saying that you did not intend to shoot your parents? What I'm saying is I didn't. If you're asking me who specifically I was firing at, when, and I don't know. You said that you were not purposely firing in that direction. What do you mean by that? Did I say that? That is not what he said. Objection misstates his testimony. He says that you were not purposely firing in that direction. Mr. Levin says objection misstates his testimony. Objection sustained. Re-ask the question. Mr. Conn says, were you intending to shoot your parents at that time? I was firing the gun and I was firing at them. I'm asking what your intent was, Mr. Menendez. I believe so. Not what you were doing. So you were intending to shoot your parents at that point in time, is that correct? Yes. And you were intending to kill them, is that correct? Had I sat down and thought about it at the time? Yes. I'm not asking you what you had done, something different. Well, you're asking him to speculate. I'm asking you what your intent was at the time you were inside that room firing the gun at your parents. The intent was to protect himself from Jose hurting him, right? From bodily harm. But it's hard for him to clarify that because he doesn't know and it was so traumatizing. Did you intend to kill them at that point in time, Mr. Menendez? That thought wasn't in my mind. Obviously, I was firing the gun at them. Clearly, I was, but there was no, it's impossible to answer that question. Why is it impossible to answer that? Because I burst through the room and I'm firing, and it happened so quickly. And I just remember seeing the red. I wasn't thinking these things at the time. It's just the rush of panic. And you're not thinking different things. It's a blur. As you sit there today, you do not deny your intent at the time was to kill your parents, do you? No, I don't deny that. How are you holding the gun? By my side. At this time, Your Honor, I'm going to ask the witness, Mr. Conn, or the court says, let's go on to something else. Oh, because he wanted him to hold the gun, and they haven't decided that, I guess, yet. Now showing you, says Mr. Conn, the photograph that has been marked 37 in this proceeding. You indicated that your father was standing approximately where the number 14 was. Here's a picture which shows the number 14 that is reflected in that diagram here. Can you be more specific as to where it was that you saw your father standing in reference to that number 14? Right, more in front of it, here. Where is that? On the diagram, 14 looks it more to be in the center between the coffee table and the couch here. Why don't you do this? Let me give you a pencil. Why don't you mark on that diagram where you saw your father standing? The court says, is that a diagram or a photograph? Mr. Conn says, photograph. The court says, I don't think that shows up very well. It needs some sort of marker. The witness does it. The court says the witness has put a small circle on the lower left side of the photograph. There's another circle in there as well, so perhaps you can put your initials in there. Yes, put EM, says Mr. Conn. The court says he's put that by the circle he's just drawn. Mr. Conn says, okay, you just put an EM inside the circle here, and that reflects where your father was standing at that time. Is that correct? Right. Well, then why didn't they just write Jose? Stupid. And you would estimate that to be about how far from the sofa at the time that you entered the room? 2 feet. And the coffee table was in front of him, or the coffee table was to his right? In front to his right. And as you fired your gun, did you see your father then do a spinning motion as he came to rest on the sofa? I don't remember what my father did, but I didn't see that. What did you see your mother do at that time? I didn't see her do anything. I'm sorry? I didn't see her do anything. I don't have an image of her doing anything. Did you see your mother fall down? No. Are you saying you just kept firing as if she were standing in that position? I just kept firing as I was running in the room. The gun was bouncing around and I just kept firing at that point. I don't know what position she was in after I first entered the room. I've said this before in the first trial that they're lucky that they didn't shoot each other in the process because remember Lyle comes around the couch and Eric's just shooting. He doesn't know what he's doing and Lyle comes around the back of the couch and shoots Jose in the back of the head. So it's very possible that, they could have crossed fired and one of them could have been injured. So they're lucky that that didn't happen. Are you saying that you did not aim at your mother any more than you aimed at your father? Right. Uh-huh. And you finished firing. After you finished firing, you heard additional shots? Right. I still remember a firing of guns. Yes. Guns or gun? The noise was so loud that it just echoed the room. I have no idea what was happening. What did you do when you finished firing and you were standing there in the center of the room? I ran out of the room immediately. Are you saying you heard additional shots being fired as you were running out of the room or while you were still in the room? I remember my gun, me trying to fire my gun, there being nothing left inside, and still hearing the noise of firing, and it just freaked me out, and I ran out of the room. So you heard additional shots before you started to run out of the room? Right, I guess so. As you were running out of the room, did you hear any additional shots being fired? I don't independently remember. How many additional shots did you hear before you began to run out of the room and after you stopped firing? I don't remember the booming of the gun. I know, I heard one. I guess I don't know if there were more than that. At any time while you were inside that room, did you ever see your father's back to you? I don't know. Now, you heard your mother moaning before you exited the room, is that correct? Right. And how did you know that that was your mother moaning? I didn't really at the time. Didn't put, I don't know when I put the two and two together. I just heard the sounds and everything, and I just wanted to be out of the room. It freaked me out, and I didn't want to be there, and so I ran out. And you went out to get more ammunition, is that correct? I know I felt defenseless in the room and hearing more shots. I know when I was at the car, that's when I was there. That's what I was there for. Were you there to reload your gun or to help your brother reload his gun? I was probably there to reload my gun. Him being there, he just took the shells. It just happened so quickly though, that I don't remember the independent differences. Now, did you see smoke inside that room at any time? I remember seeing smoke afterwards. I remember the smell of the acid of the burning most in my mind, the horrible smell. I'm not asking what you smelled. I'm asking, did you see smoke inside that room? Right. I believe I saw smoke inside the room. Whether I'm remembering seeing smoke because I saw it or I just remember the poignant acid smell, I don't know. Would you say that there was no such that there oh sorry, would you say that there was so much smoke inside that room that it made it difficult for you to see what you were shooting at? I don't know whether it would have mattered. I couldn't see because of the darkness and the fire. What I'm asking you is, was there so much smoke inside that room that it made it difficult to see what you were shooting at? It's impossible to remember. How much smoke do you remember being inside that room? Was it sufficient that it would make it difficult to see? I don't believe so, no. Now, when you got to the car for the reload, you began scrambling for shells, is that correct? Right. What do you mean, scrambling? It was very disorganized with the clothes and the empty boxes and the shells there that I was in such just grabbing them that's what I mean by scrambling. How long were you there before your brother arrived at the car? I couldn't give an estimate. A second, 2 seconds, three. And then your brother came running out to the car? I just remember him being at my side and giving them to him. You gave him one shell? I thought I gave him more. I was just trying to give them to him. I know after he took one, he ran back. He ran off. And did you call him back and tell him you're going to need more than that? No, no. Why not? Objection calls for speculation. Overruled. Erik answers, you know, emotions are going at such a speed and your heart is racing at such a speed that you're just not thinking like that. You're not thinking clearly enough to say anything. He just ran back into the room. I ran back with him, behind him, as just an instinct to be with him as he ran to the room. You're saying that you were not thinking at that time? Is that what you're saying? Right. How many times does he have to tell you that? His thoughts were not logical or made any sense, or that he doesn't even remember half of them. Probably his mind was racing a mile a minute, but at the same time, it was all like on the survival superficial level, you know, get get to the door before he gets to you type of thing. You did not think clearly enough to tell him that he might need more than one shell, is that correct? Right. Objection, it's argumentative. Overruled. But you were thinking clearly enough to know that at least one more shell was needed to finish the job, is that correct? No, I was just thinking that there was firing still going on. I didn't have anything left in my gun. I heard the sound, it freaked me out, and I ran out of the room. And that time I didn't need any more shells. It's not what I was, it's not what my emotion was telling me. You were thinking clearly enough to know one more shell was needed to finish the job? No, that's not what I believe. Objection, argumentative, sustained, the answer stricken. You did not load up your gun at that time. Right. Did you walk or run back inside the house? I sprinted after him. Why after him? He was running back into the room, and the room was what frightened me. And as soon as he took off, I thought I was going to hand him more shells. I was just trying to give him as many. And so my belief is I didn't want him to be alone as he was running back into the room. I was going to be there with him in case something happened. I didn't know. I just ran after him. You just ran out of the room and left him alone in that room, didn't you? Right. And now you're saying you didn't want him to be alone, so you were running back after him. It's outside, it's dark, it's at night. He runs back into the house, and I'm going to go with him. I'm not going to abandon him at that point. You abandoned him when you left the room while shots were being fired and you went out to the car. Right. Objection misstates his testimony. Overruled. When I heard the noises, I freaked out. I ran out and didn't even think about it at the time. Emotion told me to get out of the room. When I was running back into the house, my emotion told me, don't leave Lyle. Your emotion for your thoughts, or your emotion or your thoughts, Mr. Menendez. They were one and the same at that point because he's in flight or fight, and that's all he can focus on. You thought at that point in time that you should not leave your brother? Right. What did you intend to do with your brother inside that room? I didn't know what I intended to do, but that's just what I was feeling. You didn't still believe there was a danger inside that room, did you? I did. Why didn't you load your gun? Because he ran off. I was planning on loading my gun, I believe, and he was there, so I just gave the shells to him and he ran off, so I chased after him. You're saying even though you believed there was a danger inside that room, you went after your brother to go inside a dangerous situation simply because you wanted to be with your brother. Is that correct? I don't know how to answer that question. Those thinking along those lines and breaking it down very succinctly is not what was happening. It was a rush and a panic of emotion to get to the car. He was there, he was running in, so I just ran after him. I don't know what was going through my mind specifically, if anything. Well, you just told us what was going through your mind is you wanted to be with your brother, is that correct? Yes, that's what my feeling was with me. And your feeling was to be with him unarmed inside a dangerous room, is that correct? I don't think that that's what my feeling was. It's just what it's just that he was running back into the house and my feeling was to go after him, just to be with him. That's what I felt. Yes. So, you ran to the den with him, is that correct? No. Wasn't that what you just told us? You wanted to be with him as you went inside this dangerous situation. Objection, argumentative. The court says sustained as to the form of the question. Mr. Conn says, well, you ran after him because you wanted to be with him. Is that correct? Yes. So when he went inside the den, what did you do? That's when he was running into the house. When I got through the doors and into the foyer, I didn't want to go in the den and I stopped and I did not go in. You wanted to be with your brother. Why didn't you go inside the den? The other emotion of fear overwhelmed that one and said, I don't want to be there with him. When I actually got into the house, I didn't want to go into the den. You thought better of it by the time you got inside the house? That's one way to put it, yes. When the emotion of fear began to take precedent over you at that point, did you then run back outside and reload your gun? No. Why not? I don't know. Isn't it true, Mr. Menendez, that you knew your father was dead and your mother was dying? That's what you testified to in the first trial. That I know now. Your Honor, objection with respect to the question as compound. Sustained to the form of the question and the answer is stricken. Isn't it true that you knew your father was dead? No. Isn't it true that you knew that your mother was dying? No. You testified in the first trial that you instinctively knew that your brother was going to go inside and finish off your dying mother. Is that correct? Objection misstates his testimony, and I'd ask counsel for a page and line. Rephrase the question, says the court. Did you testify in the first trial that you instinctively knew that your brother was going to finish off your mother? I don't think I used those words. I remember using the word instinctively. I certainly didn't testify in the first trial that I knew my father was dead and that my brother was going to go in there and finish off he means mother, in those words. I remember when you brought it up before the break, what I said about instinctively. What did you say about instinctively in the first trial? If you could show me, I'll tell you exactly what I mean. You don't remember what you're telling us? Right. Did you testify that you instinctively knew? Objection. Could we have a page? Let me hear the question first. Did you testify that you instinctively knew that your brother would return to finish killing your mother? Right. Could we have the page and line just for the record, Your Honor? Mr. Conn says, just for the record, it's 16358, lines 12 through 14. May we have a moment, says Mr. Levin. What volume, counsel? The court says the witness has answered the question, so the answer is in. Well, that's a bunch of BS. Hold on. We need puppy, or dog needs blanket. Puppy's awake. We might need a potty break. Hold on. We will take a break for 1 second. All right, so the judge tells Mr. Conn to go on to the next question, please. Mr. Levin says, may I have a moment, Your Honor? Mr. Conn says, at that point in time, Mr. Levin says, Your Honor, may I have a moment? The court says, sure. Mr. Levin says, we'll have to take a few minutes to find the volume if counsel would give it to us, or won't give it to us. Your Honor, I object to counsel's mischaracterization. I'd ask we approach instead of counsel asking a question already asked and answered in front of the jury. He shouldn't show him the transcript. The court says he didn't have to show him the transcript. He asked a question and the witness had an option to say. Mr. Levin says he asked for the transcript. The court says the witness acknowledged that's what he said. That's the answer. That's the testimony. Counsel, you cannot clarify what the witness testified to. That was his testimony here in front of the jury. Now, your next question, please. Mr. Conn says, Mr. Menendez, as you were entering your home for the second time, did you go in through the front door? Yes. Why did you go in through the front door rather than the door to the study that you had entered in from the last time? I don't know. Well, I guess that's the door I ran out, so that's the door I ran back in. Plus, he was following Lyle, right? When you exited your home for the second time after first shooting your parents, you exited through the front doors. Is that correct? Right. And so when you re-entered the home now, for the first time, you entered through the front door. Is that right? Right. And is that where your brother Lyle Menendez entered from? Yes. How do you know that? Because I saw him run in that direction and go through the doors. And how far in front of you was he when he entered the home? Many, many feet. What is many, many feet? I wasn't expecting him to run off. He ran off, so he was many feet in front of me. I couldn't tell you how many feet. Maybe the distance from where you are to me. 10 feet? I think it's 10 feet, 15 feet, I guess. And you saw, were you looking at him as he entered through the doors? I have an image of him running away. As I looked over, why he was running away from me. I don't have an image of him going through the doors. I know he went through them. When you went through the door, were you able to see your brother at that point in time? Right. I think by the time I got to the doors, he was already at the den. So you saw him inside the den? No. You could no longer see your brother when he entered the doors? No, I believe I saw him run into the den and then I couldn't see him. Were you still running at that point as you were going through the front doors of your home? Yes. How long did you continue to run? I remember I got as far as the stairs, which is most of the way into the foyer. Did you run towards the stairs or did you run towards the den? I ran towards the den. By the time you got to the stairs, around the area of the stairs, you stopped running? Yes. Why did you stop running at that point? I remember I heard the fire of the gun and that stopped me. How many shots did you hear? One. And after you heard that shot, what did you do? I stopped. I was looking at the den. I remember just standing there staring at the den. And Lyle came out of the den and I went and sat down on the stairs. Now, did you put your shotgun down next to you? Yes. How long did you remain sitting there? Several minutes. Where was your brother during that time period? Across from me, on the ground in the archway of the family room. Then what happened? I remember I started to cry. I was shaking. Lyle came over and sat next to me on the stairs and put his arm around me and told me it's going to be all right to stop shaking. I told him I didn't want to wait for the police. I didn't want to talk to police. Maybe they weren't coming. Some words were exchanged about that. You said that maybe the police weren't coming? Yes. Why did you say that? Because it had been several minutes and there had been no sirens, no nothing. So they thought somebody instantly would call the police because they heard a shotgun or a gunfire, and they thought immediately someone in the neighborhood would probably hear that and call local law enforcement, which did not happen. So how much time had elapsed from the time that you first sat down to the time that you said maybe the police aren't coming? It seemed like a very long time, but time was going very slowly at this point, probably 3 minutes or 4 minutes. So after 3 minutes, you concluded that the police were not going to come because they had not yet come? I knew the police station was a mile, if not less than a mile away, and there was roving patrol in Beverly Hills, and I thought if they were going to be there, well, after you concluded they were not going to come after the 3 minutes, what did you do then? Objection misstates his testimony. Sustained. After you and your brother had a conversation about whether the police were going to come, what did you do? After we had the conversation, he said, "Maybe you're right." He said, "I don't want to be here," and we decided to leave. When you say you decided to leave, you decided that you were going to avoid responsibility for this? Right. And that took only 3 minutes from the time that you shot your parents to death. Well, it wasn't as concise as you're putting it. I said, I don't want to talk to the police. Let's get out of here. I don't want to be here when they show up. And that's it. Dog. Sorry about that. What was the question? They took 3 minutes from the time okay. So what was it? Sorry, let me back up. When you say you decided to leave, you decided you were going to avoid responsibility for this. Right. And that took only 3 minutes from the time that you shot your parents to death? Well, it wasn't as concise as you're putting it. I said, I don't want to talk to the police. Let's get out of here. I don't want to be here when they show up. And that's it. You decided at that point that you were going to put together an alibi. No, we just decided to get out of the house. And then when we were out of the house, we were trying to put together an alibi. Did you just run out of the house at that point? I know Lyle went to get his gun and we were walking towards the doors, and I believe it was me that said, "What about the shells? What if they have our fingerprints on them?" How were you able to think about the fingerprints on the shells at that point in time, Mr. Menendez? Objection, it's argumentative about how he was able. Sustained. Mr. Conn says, What made you think about fingerprints on the shells at that point in time, Mr. Menendez? I don't know what made me think about it. Whether I saw a shell on the ground or it just flashed in my memory now. But you know that started you thinking about evidence that could tie you to the crime. I thought about evidence that would tie me to the crime, and I would have been there forever. I know I thought about the shells, whether I saw one or why it flashed through my mind. I can't tell you. Well, why do you say you would have been there forever if you had thought about evidence? I lived in the home. My fingerprints were everywhere. How would that be evidence against you that you killed your parents? Objection, argumentative. The court says, are you asking his current state of mind or his state of mind at the time? His state of mind at the time, says Mr. Conn. Court says, all right, do you understand the question? Erik says, right, I didn't think about it at the time. You didn't think about that? What? All of the things that might link us at that point? It was when I was going out of the house that I thought of the shells. Well, you can correctly concluded at that time that the only fingerprints that would link you to the crime was the fingerprints on the shells. Is that correct? Objection, argumentative, sustained. Did you conclude at that time that the only piece of physical evidence that would link you to the crime would be the fingerprints on the shells? I didn't know that there were fingerprints on the shells. I just thought that there might be and to grab them. Did you think of any other physical evidence that could link you to the crime other than the possibility that there were fingerprints on the shells? At that point, I didn't know what evidence could link us or not link us. I had just fired off the gun, and what evidence was on me or in that room, I didn't know. The only piece of evidence you thought of at the time was the possibility of fingerprints on the shells. Is that correct? Yes. And so, what did you do at that time? We went to the room to gather shells. Court says if we're going to go into that point, let's take our recess and we'll resume after 25 minutes after the hour. Don't discuss the matter with anyone and don't form any final opinions, and we'll resume after 25 minutes after the hour. The jury exited the room and the following proceedings were held. So, is this the argument? Just to finish off the argument, we're going to continue their discussion from earlier in the morning. The court says, just to finish off the argument or discussion counsel had at the court or with the court regarding the question about the use of the word instinctively in conjunction with a question asked during the first trial. This was also gone into at page 44971, the last day of the testimony before the recess, and the defendant at the time also acknowledged that he so testified in the first trial. Mr. Levin says, thank you, Your Honor, but what I'm requesting is that in the future, if counsel is going to ask the witness if he testified to something from the last trial, that procedurally he be confronted with that portion of his testimony. There are 2,000 pages of his transcript, and he's entitled to be precise. He did ask for it. The court says it's not improper for a lawyer to ask in cross-examination a question of a witness. Did you testify in such a way in the last trial? If the witness says, I don't remember. Mr. Levin says, that's what he said. The court says, that's his answer. If the question is asked again and he said, I don't remember, and that's the end of it, here the witness said he acknowledged that that was his testimony. Mr. Levin says, he said, I don't remember. The court says if he persists in saying, I don't remember, then you can get to the next point. Here, the witness had already before on the same question said yes, that he did testify that way. So he's already acknowledged that twice, once before the recess on December the 21st, and then again today. So he didn't have to, from his own testimony, he didn't really need to refer to the transcript because he had a recollection. Mr. Levin says, I understand him saying that he didn't recall and that he requested to see the transcript. He absolutely did. Court says that was today. On the 21st of December, he acknowledged making that statement in the first trial, so it was proper cross-examination. Well, then shouldn't that be asked and answered? This thing is annoying. The court says that was today, so it's proper. I agree that if the witness doesn't recall the testimony, then the page and line should be brought to his attention, to counsel's attention. But it certainly is not improper for a witness, one who would expect has a recollection of his testimony, important events in the first trial, important testimony from the first trial, the important portions of that testimony to recall what he said. I don't think it's improper. It certainly is an accepted way of cross examination. Mr. Levin says, well, the objection was based on the fact that Mr. Conn read a question as though he were reading from a transcript and made it look like it was Erik Menendez's words when it wasn't his words. The court says, I didn't get that as much as just a reference to a statement, testimony, during the first trial, and that the witness acknowledged that that was his testimony. Ms. Abramson says, Judge, the point is, I don't want to belabor this. Yes, says the court. I understand if a witness says he can't remember, all you can do is refresh his recollection by showing the transcript. If he still says he didn't say it or doesn't remember, then you can impeach him. That's what we've done with every other witness except for the defendant. The court says, that's not true. I've allowed some of this questioning. Ms. Abramson says, Mr. Conn read the question that Mr. Kuriyama had asked Mr. Menendez in the first trial, which is where the instinctively knew your brother was going to go in and finish killing your mother came from. And all the defendant ever testified to in the last trial was the word yes. He read it as though it was Mr. Menendez's words. The court says again, counsel is re-arguing an issue that I've already ruled on in this ruling. On this issue relates back to what occurred on December the 21st in the testimony of this witness. He is now twice acknowledged that that was his testimony. On redirect, you can bring out the exact testimony and clarify it. All right, we'll be in recess until 25 minutes. Okay. All right. We're back from recess. The court says, all right, the jury isn't here. During the questioning of the defendant, you had asked a question, and then Mr. Conn asked to do something in regard to an exhibit. I assume that has something to do with the weapon. Is that correct? Mr. Conn says, yes, Your Honor. At this time, I would ask that I be permitted to hand the defendant the weapon for the purpose of demonstrating for the jury how it was that he held the gun. Court says, at what time? Mr. Conn says, at the time that he entered the room to do the shooting. The court says, is that the only purpose for which you propose that he hold the weapon? Mr. Conn says, he also indicated that the gun was bouncing, and I would like him to explain to the jury what he meant by that in reference to the gun. Perhaps he could demonstrate that as well. Those are the only two purposes. The court says, all right, well, there are, as I ruled earlier, I don't find the use of the weapon in the demonstrative purposes by the witness as prejudicial. At the same time, there's some security issues involved, and it seems to me that before we get into that, it would have to be established that there is a need for it and some relevance for it, and that can't be accomplished in some other fashion, such as holding the pointer to show how it was that he held this weapon, in what fashion it was held, in if what suffices. There's no need to go any further than that. That would be my first suggestion, and if you choose to do that, it's up to you to use something instead of the actual weapon. But before there's any request for the weapon to be brought out, that is to be done outside the presence of the jury. Mr. Conn says, okay. The court says, all right, let's have the jury out. The jury comes out. The court says, all right, the jury is back and will resume with the cross-examination. Mr. Conn says, after you had a conversation with your brother about the fingerprints on the weapon, Mr. Menendez, the fingerprints on the shells, did you go inside the den for the purpose of picking up the shells? There wasn't a discussion. It was a brief exchange, and then we went inside the den. Mr. Menendez, at any time from the time that your parents closed the door to the den, did you have a conversation with your brother Lyle Menendez, or was it just brief exchange? Well, the reason why I'm hesitating to sign on to what you're saying is you're trying to make it seem like there was a discussion where it was a nice, leisurely conversation, or even what we're having, and that it was like that, and it simply wasn't. That just wasn't happening. Are you saying that there cannot be a discussion unless it's a nice, leisurely discussion? Is that what you're saying? Objection, argumentative, overruled. In my mind, a discussion is stopping somebody, talking with them, deciding to do something, saying, okay, let's do that. And that's just not what was going on. You're saying you never had a discussion with your brother Sunday, August the 20th, 1989. I certainly did. I talked to him when I got home from his guest house. From the time that you shot your parents to death, you did not have any discussions with him that evening? I had a discussion in the car. When did you first begin to have a discussion with your brother Lyle Menendez after shooting your parents? We talked on the stairs. We talked in the car. We talked at the police station. When did you say that you talked on the stairs? What point in time are you referring to? After the shooting, when I was on the stairs and Lyle came over and put his arm around me, we talked then. That's what I was talking about. If you had a conversation with your brother about the fingerprints and the shells before you went into your room. Yeah, we didn't talk about the fingerprints then. I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you were saying. The fingerprints came into my mind as we were near the doors, almost walking out of the doors, not when we were on the stairs. As you were walking out of which doors? The front doors in the foyer. So, are you saying that you were about to leave your home when you then began a discussion about fingerprints? No, I was about to leave home when it flashed through my mind there could be fingerprints on the shells, and that's when I thought to get them. You had a discussion at that time about the fingerprints, is that correct? I would not call that a discussion. My question was, when was the first time you had a discussion with your brother Lyle after shooting your parents to death? I guess you could call us talking on the stairs a discussion. It was me saying, I don't want to talk to the police. Doesn't look like they're coming. They're not coming. Maybe we can leave. What about that? And then we went to leave. I wouldn't call it a discussion about the shells. I just said, what if there are fingerprints on the shells, or there could be fingerprints on the shells? You're right. And then we did it. Didn't even think one way or the other. After you had this brief exchange about fingerprints in the shells, you then went into the room, into the den, to pick up the shotgun shells. Yes, sir. What happened after you got inside the room? Either Lyle or myself, he thinks it was him and I think it was me, turned on the lights and we started getting shells. Let me ask you this. As you were before you went into the room, you were just about to go you were just about to go out the front door. Did you have a discussion or a brief exchange with your brother concerning whether or not your parents were dead? No, I did not. Why not? I just didn't. Objection, Your Honor. It would call for speculation if he didn't have the thought. Overruled. Mr. Conn says, were you concerned about the condition of your parents at all at that point in time? I don't know what you mean by that. I thought that the danger in that sense was over. The danger was over? Why? My parents were dead. How did you know that? I knew. Intellectually, you know something. Emotionally, I don't know how I knew. I just how I felt. Didn't you have trouble at that point in time emotionally dealing with the notion that your parents were dead? No, the difficulty came after the shock was wearing off, and I was thinking about my parents again as people, not as someone who might kill me, and as my parents, and being my father and my mother. And the possibility that they could be dead was inconceivable. It just was, I couldn't deal with that at that point. No. So you're saying that it was later, when the shock was wearing off, that you had problems accepting emotionally the fact that they were dead. Objection misstates his testimony. Overruled. Overruled. Your answer? Eric says yes. That's yes. What was the question again? So you're saying that it was later when the shock was wearing off that you had problems accepting it. Okay. And he says yes. Mr. Conn says, so you're telling us that at At this point in time, when you were first walking, going towards the front doors of your home to leave, you were still in shock. Is that what you're saying? Yes. And it was in this condition of shock that you said, wait a minute, there's the fingerprints. Right. So, this condition of shock did not prevent you from thinking about the evidence in this case that might tie you to this crime. Is that correct? Objection. It's argumentative. Overruled. I mean, I don't know how to answer that yes or no. The idea of fingerprints and shells went into my mind. I wasn't thinking ahead and all the other components that might go with it, but that certainly entered my mind. All right. So you were thinking about the evidence, but you were intellectually satisfied that your parents were dead at this point in time. Is that correct? I don't know how to answer the question. I guess so. I know that it wasn't on my mind if they were dead or not at the time. I don't remember thinking about it. So I am just guessing that the answer is yes. Did you still love your mother and father at that point in time? Yes. Did you think it might be a good idea to check on them and see if an ambulance might be of some assistance? At that point, those are not the thoughts that were going through my mind. Why not? I don't know. So the only purpose for which you went inside the room was to collect the evidence rather than to check on the condition of your parents. Is that correct? To collect the shells. I didn't know what other evidence there would be. Well, you knew that you knew that the shells would be used against you. Is that what you wanted to, or is that why you wanted to pick them up? I thought that they might be. I thought they might be. Yes. So who went inside the den first, you or Lyle? I don't remember. Who turned on the light? Lyle thinks it was him, but I kind of remember. I'm not asking you what your brother thinks. I'm asking you who turned on the light. I can't say for sure. I believe it was me. Well, what type of switch did you have that would turn on the light? My memory is that it's a dimmer switch that goes all the way and clicks on. I don't remember if it clicked on or just raised it from being low beam to high beam. You previously testified that it was turned on all the way, didn't you? Right. I believe it was the dimmer. And that's what I'm asking you. Whether I clicked on it or not, I don't know. It was high enough where I could see the smoke that was in the room when the lights were on. Are you saying that your recollection is different today than when you previously testified in regard to this issue? What I previously testified to is what happened, and I am testifying now as to what happened as well. I assume it's the same. And my question to you is, did you previously testify that the dimmer lights were turned all the way up? They were, and I'm saying they were. Whether or not it was clicked over is the only thing. I don't know. I don't see why it would. They were turned on or turned up. And what did you do after you turned the dimmer lights all the way up? Started collecting shells. Where did you go to collect the shells? There were shells where the word entrance is. I remember I had to reach under the 8-sided table to collect a shell, and they were all in that area. You're saying that every single shell that was fired in this case was near that coffee table, is that and that card table? Objection. It's argumentative. Overruled. What I'm saying is that from where the 3 down is, I didn't go past. When I left the room, I wasn't sure if all the shells were collected, but I didn't want to go near my mother or father, so I didn't walk over there. I don't remember seeing Lyle walk over there, and since all the shells were collected, I am putting 2 and 2 together and saying that all of them had to be. Now, when you're saying 3 down, we're talking about exit 24. This is exhibit 24 that we're referring to. Okay, this witness. And from the 3 down, you're referring to a marking on this exit that is number 3. Is that correct? Yes, sir. And you are saying that you did not go to the right of that 3. Is that correct? Right. All right. And where did your brother Lyle go? I don't believe he did either. Okay. And did either of you go over here where your parents were near the sofa and coffee table? No. So you're saying that all of the shells were recovered either from around this card table or where the entrance is located in the diagram. If you connect the dots from the 3 to 14 straight down, all of them are in that box area because they don't go far. They stay, I mean, they can bounce and stuff, but they're ejected at the same force each time, right? So why would they all be in different locations? They would be in the same spots. While you were there, did you go over and check on the condition of your parents? No, I was trying not to look at them. Did you look at them? I believe so. I was trying not to. It was very awful sight. Why did you look at them? I was I had to be in the room and it was hard not to. And I didn't want to look and I was trying not to. I was compelled, but I didn't want to look at them. Do you have a reason for looking at them? I was looking or I was trying not to look at them. I am asking you if you had a reason. Was there a purpose or did you just happen to look at them inadvertently? Well, it was right. It would have been inadvertently. I didn't want to look at them, but my eyes were just, they went that way because I was drawn to that, but I didn't want to. What did you notice when you looked over there? I noticed blood. I noticed my father on the couch and my mother on the floor. Did you notice anything else? I noticed a hazy, thick, like yellow smoke in the room and the smell of it. Are you saying that there was smoke in the room when that made it harder to see? No, what I'm saying is it was almost hovering in the room, a yellow haze of smoke. Did you previously testify that it was harder to see in the room after the shooting? When I went back into the room? Objection, Your Honor. It's vague with respect to time. But he testified before or when he went back into the room. Mr. Levin says, after the shooting, when he went back into the room. The court says, let's verify the question. Mr. Conn says, yes. At any time, did you notice that it was harder to see in that room after the shooting rather than before? Harder to see after the shooting was over? Yes. No, I don't believe it was harder to see. Okay. Did you previously testify that at some point in time it was harder to see after the shooting? During the shooting, I don't know. I remember the smell of the smoke. I don't know. It was really hard to see. My question to you is, did you previously testify that it was harder to see after the shooting than before? I don't know what I testified to about that. Mr. Khan says, okay, directing counsel's attention to volume 95, page 15890, lines 4 through 14. Do you remember being asked the following questions and giving the following answers? Mr. Levin says, Mr. Khan, may I have just one moment, please? He reads it, no objection. Mr. Khan says, Mr. Khan says, the question by Miss Abramson. She was doing the questioning in the first trial. Question. Did the smoke make the room darker, Mr. Menendez? Answer. The smoke made it harder to see. Question. That's what I'm asking you. Answer. But it was. Question. Was it harder to see in the room after the shooting or before? Answer. After. Do you remember giving those answers in response to those questions in the first trial, Mr. Menendez? I'm going to need to see it because I don't know what you're reading, or I don't know that you're reading it correctly. Question. You're reading from the preceding page, Mr. Menendez? Right. It's all talking about smoke. I think she was asking me. Okay, well, I'm not asking you what you think your counsel was asking you. I am asking you, Mr. Menendez, do you remember giving those answers to those questions in the first trial? about whether there was more smoke in the room after I got back to the room or immediately after I started firing? My question, do you remember giving these answers to those questions in the first trial? Well, yes, they're here on the page. All right, and what were you referring to when you gave those answers to those questions? Mr. Levin says, objection, it's compound. Court says, overruled. Ms. Abramson says, or I'm sorry, the witness says, Ms. Abramson was asking me after I started firing if there was more smoke in the room than obviously before I started firing when there was none. Mr. Conn says, okay, so Ms. Abramson was asking you if it was harder to see as a result of the firing. Is that correct? Objection, Your Honor, that's not what it says. Court says, this is just a question and the witness can answer it. The witness says, I don't know. I don't know. I know that there was a long exchange there. If you'd like to read it, it would become clear. Mr. Khan says, my question to you, Mr. Menendez, is Ms. Abramson was asking you if, was asking you if it was harder to see in the room as a result of the shots that were fired. Is that correct? I don't remember if that's what she was asking me. Would you like to see this passage again? All right. Right, that's what she's asking after he reads it. And you understood what she was asking about when you answered those questions, didn't you? Right. I didn't sign on to that. You didn't sign on to that? That the smoke made it harder to see. You didn't sign on to that. No. Can you tell us what you mean when you were asked a question? Was it harder to see in the room after the shooting or before? And you said after. I think you're reading one line of what I said. She was asking the question. I didn't want to give the impression that the smoke made it hard to see. Clearly, there was smoke, and that made it harder to see. But I did not want to give the impression, and I was trying, and I think it's clear there, to give the impression that the smoke made it hard to see through. Didn't you say the smoke made it harder to see? She said, did the smoke make it harder to see before or after you started shooting? And I said, after. That's what I said. Mm, we're parsing words here, and it's a stupid argument. Did you say that the smoke made it harder to see? Is that correct? Essentially, that is what I'm saying, and that's what I said. That clearly before there was smoke, it was easier to see than after there was smoke. But the smoke did not make it hard to see through things. Like you could see through, you could still see the room. It wasn't covered in smoke. It's difficult. That's what I'm trying to explain. And in the first trial, there was no testimony that the type of ammunition that was used was smokeless powder, was there? What does it matter? Objection, Your Honor. There's none. Sorry, there's none in this trial either. The court says, well, that's not an appropriate objection. Why don't you rephrase the question? What is your objection? Mr. Levin says, well, assumes facts, not an evidence. Sustained. Rephrase the question. Mr. Khan says, yes. Was there testimony in the first trial that the type of ammunition used in the case was smokeless powder? Objection. It's irrelevant, and it also calls for hearsay. Sustained. Sustained. Now, how many shotgun shells did you pick up when you were inside that room? I don't know. I grabbed them in my hand. I don't know if I put them in my pocket or how many. Did you pick up some wadding? No. You mean the little plastic things that we've been talking about? No. And what did you do with the shells that you picked up? I grabbed them. I don't remember if I put them in my pocket or had pockets to put them in, but I grabbed them. Don't know if it was a pocket or not. Did you have any discussion with your brother? Let me rephrase that. Did you have any brief exchanges with your brother while you were inside that room? I don't remember saying anything. Do you remember your brother saying anything to you while you were inside that room? Not anymore. Are you saying that at one point you recalled there was a discussion between that room and you no longer recall what that discussion is? No. What I'm saying is I don't remember. Nothing stands out in my mind. And there was no discussion about whether or not your parents were dead. Is that correct? Right. So, as far as you recall, you and your brother proceeded to pick up the shells in silence and left the room. Right. Is that all that basically happened in there? Yes. Then, did you have any conversations with your brother about whether or not your parents were dead after that? I remember saying in the car, I can't believe this. I don't think I ever said that to him. Are they dead? I just remember expressing disbelief that this had just happened. And then during that time, no one went over to take their pulse, I take it? No, sir. And you were searching around the card table. Well, when you say you looked at them, where were you when you were looking at them inside your parents' inside that room? Right in that area. I can't tell you where exactly I was standing. By that area, are you referring to the entrance, the entire entrance area and the area around the card table? Between the word entrance and the coffee table. Did you glance at them once or maybe twice? My eyes were continually drawn to them, and I continually had to look away. I looked at them probably more than once. Are you saying it was more than once? I'm saying I don't remember. I remember the images of them. I don't remember if I got that image from one time or more than one. Did you look at your mother long enough to see if she was still breathing? Yes. Did you look at your father long enough to see if he was still breathing? I don't know. When did you learn that your father had been shot in the back of the head? When the coroner testified to it last trial? Wow, so you didn't even know. As far as you knew from what you saw at that point in time, your father had just been shot in the leg. Is that correct? I did not believe he was shot in the head because if my brother was standing behind my father, I would have shot him. Right? That's what I was talking about, like the crossfire. And so I didn't believe that my father was shot in the back of the head. I didn't know where exactly he was shot, but I remember the leg wound because it was so graphic and horrific and huge that it just stood out in my mind. So what I'm asking is, you knew for sure at that point in time that your father had been shot in the back of the or in the leg and had blood on his shirt. Isn't that correct? I didn't know how he was shot. I'm asking you, were you able to see at that point in time you saw a leg wound, didn't you? Yes. You saw blood on his shirt, didn't you? Yes. And you saw your father's motionless body. Is that correct? Yes. And you could not see a single other word to his body, did you? What? I don't know what that means. I just remember there being on the right side. I don't remember seeing wounds specifically other than the one to his leg. Did it occur to you that maybe you should take his pulse? No. Did you leave your father at noon in time? For the love for my father didn't change. Why didn't you check his pulse? He was motionless and still. I didn't think to do that. It wasn't worth checking. I probably would have been afraid to find out that he was still alive. Why would you be afraid to find out that your father would still be alive at this pool or at this sorry, at this point? Because objection calls for speculation, overruled. The witness says, because then he would be alive, he would recover, and my life would end. I didn't want to know either way, but I certainly was not going to go check his pulse. I didn't want to touch him. So did you feel that you might be in danger if he was still alive at that point, Mr. Menendez? Without question, once I walked into that room with a gun in my hand, I was in danger if he was alive. You're saying at that point, after you saw your father lying, sitting on the sofa with a leg wound, you felt that you were still in personal or potential danger from your father if he was alive? Yeah. Mr. Levin says objection, mischaracterizes the testimony, overruled. The witness says, no, that's not what I'm saying. You're asking me, did I check his pulse? And I am saying I didn't check his pulse. Had I found a pulse, I shouldn't have known what to do. I didn't think that he was alive at that point. I saw him on the couch, still motionless, and didn't think that he was alive. Why would you not have known what to do? If you had found your father with a pulse, that point, Mr. Menendez, objection calls for speculation, overruled. Yeah, it's easy to say what I would do if other situations or other circumstances took place, but you're not supposed to be able to speculate like that on the stand. So I don't know why these keep getting overruled. The witness says, because when I heard the sound that I now know is from my mom, it freaked me out. I didn't know what to do. I sprinted through the room. The fact that he could still be alive, my mom could still be alive, all this firing, all the shots was unbelievable to me. And it scared me before if his pulse was still, if he was alive, then I wouldn't have known what to do. Mr. Khan says, why wouldn't you have known what to do? That's my question. Objection, speculation. Overruled, says the court. I don't know. I would have been in disbelief and shock that I just didn't believe that he could. I don't. I am speculating now on how I would have thought back then. I don't know. Mr. Khan says, Mr. Menendez, before you went back into that room, did you wonder whether your parents had truly been armed? I didn't. It didn't. I assumed that they had been. It didn't go into my mind. I didn't begin thinking about it. As you were sitting in the foyer, before you went back into the room, did you have any doubts or concerns about the necessity of your actions? When I was sitting on the stairs? Yes. No, I was thinking about the police coming. You did not stop to question whether it was really necessary to shoot your parents to death? You're talking about seconds after the shooting? I'm talking about minutes. And seconds that lead into minutes, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and I am shaking and I am crying and I am not thinking about that at that point. And at some point, I'm thinking about what's going to happen next. And at some point, you begin to think about evidence. Is that correct? When I am leaving, either I saw a shell or for some reason it went into my mind that there could be fingerprints on the shells. And it never occurred to you, it was never a concern to you at the time whether it was really necessary to have shot your parents to death. Not until I calmed down some did that begin to go into my mind. When was that, Mr. Menendez? I know that I I know that I thought about it and that it was really hitting me when I was back to the room later that night. I know that in the car I could not believe that it was happening. I don't know if at that point I thought about it, but I remember the feelings when I was home later that night. So the only time that you know for sure that you began to question whether it was really necessary to have shot your parents to death was when you returned back to your home after getting rid of the weapons. Is that correct? That's the only time that I can know for sure, yes. And up until that time, there was no thought in your mind or conversation with your brother about whether or not it had been necessary to shoot your parents to death. Is that correct? I know there wasn't a conversation. I know there were thoughts in his mind. There were certainly. I am not asking about thoughts in his mind. I am asking about thoughts in your mind or any conversation with your brother concerning whether or not it had been necessary to shoot your parents to death. Before we got back to the house, after getting rid of the weapons, I don't remember any discussion. No. No discussion happened like that. Whether I was thinking that, I don't remember at all. Mr. Menendez, shooting your parents to death was the last thing in the world that you wanted to do. Is that correct? Yes, I didn't want to die. I didn't want my dad to come out of the room. I didn't want to shoot him. Can you tell us, Mr. Menendez, why, when you were sitting in the foyer after shooting your parents to death, you did not question whether your parents had truly been armed? I can't tell you why I didn't question something. I can tell you what was in my mind at the time and how I was physically reacting and how my emotions were surging. I can't tell you why I think or why I didn't think something, though. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't have certain thoughts. I just don't think that way. Like, that's a dumb question. So the only reason you shot your parents was because you believed that they were armed. Is that correct? Right. And yet you never saw a weapon that day. Is that correct? Right. Weren't you curious, Mr. Menendez, as to whether or not your parents had truly been armed? Yes. And so did you rush back into that room to look and see if they were armed to satisfy yourself with that with to satisfy yourself that they were not armed? The curiosity didn't come to me until over an hour had passed and what had just happened was beginning to hit me in waves, and that's one of the reasons I was drawn to the room after I got back to the house to look at what had happened and to look at the scene. So you did not become curious as to whether or not your parents had been armed until 1 hour later? I don't know what you mean by curious as to whether they were armed. I am telling you that those thoughts came to me when I got back to the house. It's one of the things that I wanted to see. I don't know if it came to me earlier. All right. So you picked up these shells, and what did you do? We left the house. And your intention at that time was to accomplish what? Picking up the shells. Once you left with the shells, what was your intention at that point in time? To leave the house, to try to get rid of, try to not let the police know that it was us that had done this. When you say try to not let them know, you're saying you wanted to fool the police into thinking that you had nothing to do with this. Is that correct? Mr. Levin says, objection, argumentative, overruled. I guess that's expressly the same thing, yeah. Mr. Conn says, and you wanted to avoid punishment, is that correct? I'm not sure at what point I was thinking about jail. I certainly was thinking about jail at about an hour and a half later. At that point, I just did not want to tell the police what had happened. So where did you go after leaving the driveway area? I made a right out of the driveway. Okay, now I can't see because dog. Can you sit down, please? I made a right out of the driveway and a left on the street before sunset, and don't know what streets we took from there. From then on, we went to the Century City theaters. Showing you the map of Los Angeles, you went from your home in Beverly Hills to the movie theater that was indicated here on the map. Is that correct? Yes. How long did it take you to get there? I don't know exactly how long it takes to get from my house to the theater. I would estimate 5 minutes. Okay. As you were pulling out from your driveway, did either you or your brother say, let's go to the movies? We weren't sure where we wanted to go. I remember at one point thinking that we had to get to the movies, but I know that I wanted to get rid of the guns, that the guns were with us, and that's what I didn't have to have or didn't want to have. But we went to the theaters first. They wanted to get rid of the guns. How long was it after you left your driveway area that you decided that you were going to go to the movie theater? Probably within 2 minutes. We were driving to the general direction and we just kept going. What was your reason for deciding at that point, 2 minutes out of your driveway, that you were going to go to the movie theater? I don't understand what you mean. Yes, you're saying the decision was made approximately 2 minutes after you pulled out of your driveway that you were going to go to the movie theater. Is that correct? Right. And what was the reason for going to the movie theater at that point? To try to get tickets so we could show the police that we had been at the movie theater and not at the house at the time of the shooting. And that decision was made sometime after you left your driveway to the time 2 minutes later when you decided that you were going to go do that. Is that correct? Right. And so who was it who thought of this in 2 minutes? Well, we were throwing a lot of things back and forth, and where we can say we were at, and we were supposed to have been there anyway. So that was the first thing that came to mind. I know that I wanted to get rid of the guns, and so I think I was saying, no, we've got to get rid of the guns, and him saying, no, let's go to the movies first, and that's where we went first. It seems like the whole thing, the whole scene is just pretty much chaotic, and they're just kind of playing it by ear. So there was no premeditation there. When you say you were throwing a lot of things back and forth, what were the things that you were throwing back and forth? Ideas where we could say we were at where we at blah, blah, blah. Ideas where we could say where we were at, and the only thing that made any sense was the theaters. What ideas were you throwing back and forth for which you could say you were at? I don't remember. I don't remember now. You don't recall any of those ideas? I am sure they were just ideas of saying we were eating someplace or something like that. I don't remember what they were. So when you got back to the movie theater, where did you park your car? We parked the car on the side of the street near the valet parking, I believe. And then you went up and you stood in line to purchase your theater tickets? Right. How much time had elapsed from the time that you had shot your parents to death up until the time that you were standing on a line to purchase movie tickets? I don't know. Give us a best estimate. Maybe 10, 15 minutes. I'm really guessing. And you were not crying on in the line, were you? Why does he keep saying on the line? I wasn't sobbing, certainly. I don't know if I was crying where it would be noticeable. Your brother Lyle was not sobbing in line, was he? No. Was there a conversation with the person selling the movie tickets? Yes. Who conducted that conversation? We were both standing right there, but Lyle was talking. What did that conversation consist of? We wanted to get tickets to the movie, License to Kill. That started at 8. She was telling him that it had been sold out and he couldn't get tickets. And so we said tickets to Batman, which was also around 8. And that's when she told him that it was too late to purchase tickets, that we would not get tickets. So, what type of tickets were purchased? He said, then just give me the tickets for the next showing, or just give me some type of tickets. And in case perhaps the time wasn't said on the tickets, but I noticed later that they were, so I threw them out. All right, so what did you do after you got the tickets? We left. Now, when you were going from your car up to the line to purchase the movie tickets, were you running? Yes. Why? Why were we running? Yes. I wanted to get to the theater as fast as possible. Why? To get tickets to the movie that was still playing, that had started playing before the shooting happened. Did you realize when you were running that this showing for which you were going, for which you wanted tickets, had already started? Well, I wanted to get to a showing that obviously had already started or was already in the process. Did you run once you purchased the tickets? Did you run from the line back to your car? I don't remember, possibly. You don't remember if you were running or not? I don't remember going back to the car. I remember running up the steps, where the valet parks, where the valet parking was, and the ticket booth being ahead of me, far ahead. I don't remember going back to the car. I remember, obviously, I did. I don't remember doing it. Well, as soon as you got the tickets, did you look at the tickets to see if the time was on the tickets? I remember doing that in the car. Why did you look at it? Why did you not look at it right then and there? I don't know. This was going to be your piece of evidence that might be used to defend you in your murder prosecution. Is that right, Mr. Menendez? I didn't think that far ahead. I just thought it was something to show the police to show that we weren't there. You got far enough to know that this is something that you might have to show the police, correct? Right. So when you had this proof in your hands, you're telling us that you didn't look at it at that point to see if it had a time on it? Objection argumentative. Overruled, says the court. Erik says, no, I didn't look at it exactly at that point. I looked at it later in the car when I got back in the car. Was there any reason to run back to your car at that point in time? I'm trying to remember. I don't remember if there was a reason or not. I know that we were trying to at some point get to Perry at the Taste of LA. I know that Lyle had plans to meet him, and I don't remember if we were trying to rush or not. I don't know. So you went back to your car, and what did you do at that point in time? We drove. I was giving Lyle directions to how to get to Mulholland. He kept telling me to slow down because he was rushing his car, driving fast and erratic, and I was telling him to slow down, and we went up to Mulholland. What was your reason to go to Mulholland at that point? It was the first place that came to my mind where to get rid of the guns. Why are you saying that that's the first place that came to mind? Because that's the truth. That's the first place that came to mind. Well, why did you think of this place as a place to get rid of the guns? Oh, because I knew that it was a mountainous area with forest. Why did you not want to just drop them off somewhere in the street or when leaving the gas station? I suppose I could have put them in a dumpster. I don't know. I didn't want them to be connected to us. I don't know if I thought that maybe someone would see me putting it there, or I don't know. Clearly, I didn't want to just leave them in the street. Wanted to put them in a place where they wouldn't be found. Is that correct? Right. And to this day, they have not been found, at least that we know of. And you gave your brother directions and he drove. Yes. How far did you drive with him at that time? We went up Coldwater to Mulholland and dropped the guns there, and we drove back down. Well, let me show you on this map, and perhaps you can indicate with a red marker where it was that you ultimately dropped off the guns. We can take that down. The witness says, this is Elm, here's Coldwater, here's Mulholland. So somewhere between here and then an unidentified juror pops up and says, can't hear you. Erik says, oh, somewhere between here and here, I guess. I don't know the distance on the map. If these are miles or half or a mile or mile, I don't remember either. Mr. Conn says, why don't you make a circle around the area where you think you were when you dropped off the guns? He does so. Thank you. You may resume your seat. How much time elapsed from the time that you shot your parents up until the time you dropped off the guns up in Mulholland? I don't know. I don't know how long it takes to go from the movie theaters up to Mulholland anymore. I'm sure at some point I knew, but I don't remember now. Well, can you give us an estimate of how long you think it was before you dropped off the guns? Well, if I got to the theaters 10 or 15 minutes later, I am now trying to give you an estimate on top of that one. I don't know how long it takes to go from the theaters to the top of Mulholland. 10 minutes or 15 minutes, 12 minutes, I don't know. How did you decide upon the spot to drop off the guns? I just pulled over wherever it was possible to pull over on the side of the road. What did you do when you pulled over? I got the guns and I went down the hill and I was slipping down the hill. At some point, I said, "This is far enough," and I put them there. And I think it was next to a bush, and I started climbing back up the hill. How far down the hill did you go? Anywhere between 50 feet and maybe 100 feet. I don't know. It seemed far. I remember seeing the lights way, way above. Why did you not just toss the guns from your car? I could have done that, I guess. I don't know. From Mulholland, where did you go? From Mulholland, we went to where Perry was. Did you stop at a gas station along the way? I think we might have. I'm not sure if the gas station was after or before Perry, but I know at some point that night we did stop at a gas station with a dumpster on its right and a car wash behind it, I believe. Did you change your clothes? I took off my pants and I put on either some sweatpants or some jeans, whatever we had in the car. I know that. Is that all? I don't believe I changed my shirt. I might have. My shoes, it's difficult to remember. I don't remember exactly what Lyle changed. And what did you do with the shells? We were trying to collect things and put them in a bag and put them in the dumpster. When were you trying to collect things and put them in a bag? At the gas station. Well, what had you done with the shells that you had collected after you first went in your car back in Beverly Hills? I threw them in the back of the hatchback. You just scattered them back there? I tossed them in the back. And then in the gas station, you recollected them to put them in a bag? Right. I think that's right. And from the gas station, did you then go to the Taste of LA? If I went to the Taste of LA, if I went to the gas station before the Taste of LA, then we would have gone to the Taste of LA directly then. Now, the Taste of LA is over here on the map. Is that correct? That's where it is. Now, how long did it take for you to go from here at Mulholland down here to the Taste of LA? I no longer remember. I think last trial I gave better estimates than I would be able to give now. I don't independently remember anymore how long these times were. I just don't remember. Well, this whole route that you took from the time that you left your home to the time that you returned home took how much time? From the time I returned home? Yes. What time was the 911 call? Well, I'm asking you, what is your best recollection as to how long it took you to make this entire route? The only way I can know is by knowing when it was that the police were called and when it was that the shooting happened. And just the time that independently was just, I wasn't a good judge of time at that point. And so you can't give us an estimate? Not with any reliability. And after when you got to the Taste of LA, where did you go? I remember Lyle going into the Taste of LA, me waiting in the car. I remember him being in there a long time, me getting impatient, and I have a memory of getting out of the car to try to find where Lyle was, but it's vague. I'm not sure. At some point, he came back. When you say you remember him being in there a long time, how long was Lyle away from you? Or how long was Lyle Menendez out of your sight before you saw him again? It seemed like many minutes, 10 minutes. And when he came back, was there a conversation about a telephone call? Right. He said that he had tried to find Perry in there, that Perry was not there. The place was closing when we got there, and so maybe it wasn't 10 minutes. I don't know. He said that he had tried to find Perry, couldn't find Perry. He called Perry, and that we were supposed to meet him at a restaurant in Beverly Hills, and so we left. Where did you go from there? It became very obvious that I wasn't, and neither was Lyle, going to be able to sit down and try to pretend that nothing had happened that night. I was shaking, I was crying at that point. I believe Lyle was too, and so we decided we better go home instead because otherwise Perry is going to know that something happened before we got there. So you went home at that point in time? Yes. And you went inside your home? Yes. And then you looked at your parents again? Yes. And what was your reaction for looking at your parents? I remember being drawn to the room. I remember looking at that point for guns. I remember just just finding it impossible to believe that they were dead and how wrong it felt. Why did you become curious at that point in time if your parents had been armed? I don't know why feelings hit me at whatever times they did. They just do, I guess. When you were driving around with your brother that whole time, did you ever say to your brother, or did he ever say to you, hey, our parents were armed. We have no reason to fear the police. We get shot in self defense? I remember saying, I can't believe this has happened. This is happening. I didn't believe for an instant that whether my parents were armed or not, that you could possibly know. So the significance of your parents possibly being armed was never discussed between you and your brother during the entire trip around Los Angeles. Is that correct? I don't remember it being discussed between us, no. So the thought of telling the police what you say is the truth, that you believed that your parents were armed, was an option that was never considered. Is that correct? Objection. It's vague. Sustained. Rephrase the question. Mr. Khan says, are you saying that the possibility of telling the police that your parents had been armed was never considered? Actually, it was just the opposite. It was after I told Lyle that I didn't want to talk to the police and tell them what had happened. It was a We were trying to do just the opposite and say that we were not home. I remember being worried and Lyle being worried and saying, "Are you going to be able to tell the police that you were at the movies instead of at home at the shooting?" And being unsure whether or not I was going to be able to say something different than what had happened. But I know that I definitely did not want to because of all the things that it would lead to. Because of what? Of all the things that it would lead to. What would it lead to? It would lead to me having to tell about the sex between dad and I, and that's what I did not want to have to do. Well, did you ever consider leaving out the sex and just telling the police, look, here are the bodies and there are the guns right next to the bodies. There are the guns that they were going to shoot us with and kill me and my brother? I remember being unsure whether or not I was going to be able to say that or not. That's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you, did you ever have a conversation or a brief exchange with your brother in which you said, let's tell the police, not about the sex, but let's tell the police that about the facts that our parents were trying to kill us, and the proof of that is, are there guns lying next to their dead bodies? Yeah, if they really wanted to, I was thinking that earlier, but I didn't want to break. If they had really wanted to make it look like their parents were trying to kill them, they could have planted the guns on the parents. He says, no, I don't believe I would have had a conversation like that. I was specifically trying not to say that and do just the opposite. So you're planning on getting rid of the guns and that were in the den with your dead parents? Had I seen them, I might have. Probably not. Probably not. So there was no discussion up until the time that you returned to your home with the movie tickets. Well, let me ask you this. When did you get rid of the movie tickets? Before dropping off the guns and getting rid of them. I think it was right after I got in the car. I wanted to look at that time on the tickets, and seeing that time was for the next showing that said 10:15 or 10:30 or whatever the showing was. Up until the time you arrived at home, was there any discussion with your brother about what you were going to do with the guns? That's another thing. If they wanted to have movie tickets, they could have bought them way in advance to make it look like they had an alibi. They didn't have to go get them afterwards, you know? So if this was premeditated, there's so many other things that they could have done that they should have done differently. Because the state likes to make us think that it was premeditated, but the brothers have always been consistent that it was not. Up until the time you arrived at home, was there any discussion with your brother about what you were going to do with the guns and the ammo that you believed to be in the den with your dead parents at the time? What I am saying is, I don't remember any. I've never been asked the question before up until this time. I don't remember any at that point. All right. So when you got into the home, you go straight from the front doors into the den where your dead parents were? Yes. And where was Lyle Menendez when you did that? By my side or next to me or in front of me? I don't know. What was your reason for going in to take another look at your dead parents? For all of these reasons, I can't remember or I can't really point to any one. I know that I was drawn to the room. I don't know which emotion was swaying me most, but it was a need to go in there. Why was there a need to go into that room at that point in time? I don't know why. They were my parents, and I needed to see them, to be with them, to look at them, to see what had happened and why that this had happened. Well, you knew why this has happened, isn't that correct? I knew why this had happened. Excuse me, I was telling Lyle I couldn't believe that this had happened, and I just needed to go back into the room. Did they look like wax figures to you? What kind of a question is that? They looked unreal. It was so awful that they just looked unreal. Like wax figures, I guess, is the right word. I don't, I think I may have used it before. You previously described them as looking like wax figures. Is that correct? Right. Did you make any discoveries about them when you went into the room? I know I saw that there were no guns that I could see, weapons of any kind. I remember staring at them. I remember my emotions overwhelming me. Why were your emotions overwhelming you at this point? Because of how wrong it seemed that, well, what was wrong about it? It just seemed so wrong that my father was dead, that my mother was on the ground. The feeling that this had happened, that it had come to this, that I had done this, just seemed horribly wrong. What? Simply the what? Simply the fact that they were dead? The fact that I was standing there looking at my parents dead seemed just like it was a different reality. It wasn't my world. It wasn't something that I wanted to believe that it could come to. And these were two people that I loved, especially my mother, tremendously. And the fact that she would be dead in front of me and that I could have done it, it seemed so or too impossible to believe. Well, when you use the word wrong, what are you saying? That there was something odd about it or unbelievable? What do you mean by wrong? No, not odd. I mean, it was wrong that I could have done this. It was wrong for my father, this or extraordinarily powerful man, awesome man, to be dead in front of me by my hand. It seemed, what I was saying is, it felt wrong because I felt that I was wrong, that it was wrong. What I did was wrong. Why did you conclude that what you had done was wrong? Because they were dead. Is that the only reason why? Simply because they were dead? Just because they were dead, and I didn't want them to be dead, and they were dead, and it shouldn't have come to that. It shouldn't have. They shouldn't have been dead in front of me. It just seemed, the scene seemed unbelievable and not right. Something that I never thought I would be part of my living, and it just seemed awfully wrong. Well, did the fact that there were no guns in the room have anything to do with your feelings with that it was wrong? Yes. What did you think about that? I don't know what I thought of that. I saw that they were not there. I believed that they were going to be, that something was going to be there. Nothing was there. And it was a part of the whole picture that this was not right. Well, what was your reaction to the fact that there was no gun in the room? I don't remember my specific reaction. I remember being surprised, shocked actually, that there were no guns in the room. I don't remember my physical reaction. I was already crying at that point, and what I did, I remember looking at the bar. There was a bar in the corner because I thought maybe they would be in the bar and on the other side of the coffee table, and there was nothing there. There was nothing there. Did you have a discussion with your brother Lyle about that fact? I don't remember if he was in the room at that particular. I know that I was in the room much longer than he was. I was in the room at some point when he was making the 911 call. I don't remember saying anything. I probably did, although I am not sure what words were coming out of my mouth at that point. You can actually hear him crying in the 911 call, the audio for that, and Lyle too. Mr. Conn says, at any point that evening, did you discuss with your brother, Lyle Menendez, the fact that your parents hadn't been armed? No. I remember that the next time I saw him, was him saying that he had to go outside, that the police wanted us to go outside, and then him asking me in the back of the police car whether or not I was going to be able to, whether or not I was going to be able to break down and tell the police what had happened. Early in the morning, after we had talked to the police, I believe that's when we began talking about those things. Not until the following morning did you turn to your brother and say, "What do you know? They weren't armed after all?" No. What I was saying is that I may very well have said that in the room. I don't remember if he was next to me. I was mumbling things to myself because I was just in disbelief inside the room that what I was feeling, I was actually seeing. It was the next morning. Right away, I talked to Edmonds, Detective Edmonds, at 1 o'clock in the morning. It was after those interviews the next time I was alone with him, that those things began being talked about. Well, you were alone with Lyle Menendez in between the phone calls with the police, is that correct? Phone calls with the police, they told us to get out of the house immediately. They told us to exit the house, and we got out of the house. And as soon as the phone call was made, they were there within 15 or 20 seconds. So are you saying that at no time that evening did you have a chance to talk to Lyle about the fact that your parents hadn't been armed? So before that evening, do you mean midnight? Can you tell us approximately when it was the following morning that you recall discussing with your brother the fact that your parents had not been armed? I remember outside on the curb, away from the police in the darkness in the early morning, with my brother saying things like talking about the fact that the police were going to search the car and we were going to be arrested right then. That's really the first conversation I remember. Are you saying before you went to the police station, you discussed with your brother the fact that your parents hadn't been armed? No, I'm saying this is after the police station. This was at 5 o'clock in the morning. Okay, so it was approximately 5 hours after you learned that your parents had not been armed that you and your brother had a conversation about your parents not being armed. Is that correct? Right. There simply wasn't any time before then. And was there a brief exchange, or was it a conversation? It was a conversation. We were both there talking. We were sitting on the curb in the street, and there were all kinds of police lights and police investigators around, and we talked about many things. Did you raise the issue that your parents hadn't been armed, or did he raise the issue that your parents hadn't been armed? I believe it was Lyle. What did he say about that? I remember him saying that there were no guns in the house, or in the room. And what did you say? I don't remember what I said. I was just in complete shock that this happened and saying to him that I can't believe that this had happened. I can't believe that they're dead. It was an exchange about that, more about the fact that they were dead than there were no guns in the room, but what had happened. Did you exchange any sentiment about I should have moved out, I should have gotten away, rather than jump to conclusions about your parents being armed? I never believed that I could ever get away from them. So I never brought that up to my brother ever until many years of therapy and after we were in jail. I didn't begin saying those things to Lyle ever before then, never before we were arrested. So that morning at 5 o'clock, was there any discussion about any regrets about what had happened? Oh, there was definitely talk of regrets of what had happened on that day, on every day. Well, did you say that we were wrong, we should not have shot our parents? Yes. And did he say that to you? Right. That's what we were talking about. And you said it was one big mistake. Is that correct? In the sense that we were talking about the fact that how could this have come to this? Did you admit to each other that it was one big mistake? I don't know if I used that word, but essentially I was saying this is wrong. I can't believe this is happening. Did you discuss at that point the fact that moving out or leaving home would have been much better than rushing into that room and shooting your parents to death? I still believe that my parents were going to kill me at some point. We were wrong about them having guns in the room at that point, but they didn't want us to leave the house that night. And absolutely, if they were going to kill us at that point, my dad was going to come up to my room and try to have sex with me, and one of us was going to die. So it wasn't a disbelief that we were suddenly realizing that they were not going to kill us at all. Something was going to happen, and I still believe that they were going to kill us at some point. Certainly, my father or myself was going to die that night. So, did you say to your brother, Lyle Menendez, that night this was inevitable and would have happened anyway? No. What I was saying that it just seemed that the whole image of that night seemed like fate somehow missed a step. Something happened wrongly, and it should not have come to this. Did you see Clara Wright at some point that morning? I think that was much later. What time was that when you saw Clara Wright? I don't have an independent recollection of when it was. I remember there were television crews and cameras all around the house all throughout the morning, so it couldn't have been early. I don't think it was before 11 or noon. Okay. And was there still yellow police tape somewhere around the area or the crime scene at the time that you saw Clara Wright? I believe so. And did you have a conversation with her at that time? Right, yes. Was your brother present during the entire conversation? I don't think Lyle was there. He wasn't? I don't remember Lyle being there. I don't remember. I never remembered it until she testified here during trial and the testimony before the trial. I never remembered seeing her at all that morning. Go ahead. Are you finished? Yeah. I am asking you, for your best recollection, did you speak to Clara Wright alone, or was your brother present during that conversation? My best recollection is now I was alone. My brother was not there. And what conversation did you have with her at that time? She had come over for Billy's tennis rackets and she asked me what was happening because of, I don't know, the police tape was still there. So the police had to still be there. And she saw the police and she asked me what was happening. And I told her that my parents had died and she was expressing great sorrow to me in a very comforting tone and words, just very caring, motherly type of exchange, and wanted to be with her. And she said, come to my house if you have, basically she was saying, come to my house. I'll take care of you. I'll take care of you until the relatives come. And that's what I wanted to do. I remember I got her rackets for her son. So you wanted to be with Clara Wright that day, is that correct? I didn't think about it until, I don't remember thinking about it until she drove up. I'm saying after she drove up, you wanted to be with Clara Wright that day. I didn't want to be inside the Beverly Hills home. And so it seemed the best place to be outside of the Beverly Hills house. Yes. So why did you go to the residence of the Wrights that day? To be with Mrs. Wright and Mr. Wright. And what was it about Mr. Wright that you caused that caused you to want to see him that day? Just the type of person he was, the type of man that he was. He was a man that had all the answers at the tennis matches and so on, and he was a jolly person, loud, and Mrs. Wright was very caring, motherly type of figure, and just wanted to get away from the house. So that's where I wanted to go. How often had you visited Mr. Wright before? I had never been to their house. That I remember. But it was this. Today you wanted to be with a jolly person? No, I didn't want to be with him because he was jolly. I wanted to be with him because he was a warm kind of a person, and it seemed a comforting place to be outside of the Beverly Hills house. I didn't want to be at the Beverly Hills house. I didn't have any real options, and the only place that there was friendly, warm people, it seemed, was Mrs. Wright. Mr. Menendez, isn't it a fact that you wanted to be with him because he handles probate? I did not know. Objection. The witness says that he handled probate at the time. I knew he was a defense lawyer. I didn't even know what the word probate was. Why does he get to keep continuing his answer when there's an objection? The court should stop him. Mr. Conn, and then we never come back to it. Mr. Conn says, when you were on the street, there with Mrs. Wright outside of your residence, didn't you have a conversation with her about wanting to see her husband, wanting to talk to her husband? I don't know if I am sure I did. I'm sure I said that. I certainly never said anything about probate or anything like that. So you're saying that you were sure that you told her that you wanted her to see her husband that day. Is that correct? What I am saying is, I may very well have said that. She said, come over, and I may very well have said that. Yes, I don't know if I did. So you're saying that you didn't make any request to speak to her husband until after she had invited you over the phone? Over to the home, sorry, over the phone, over to the home. I don't know. My memory of the conversation is at best vague. I remember her being very caring, and that's what stands out in my mind. Do you think it's possible that you indicated to her that you wanted to speak to her husband? Yeah, it's possible. Yes, I may very well have done that. I don't know. And the fact that her husband is a lawyer has nothing to do with it. Is that what you're saying? What I am saying is that I knew her husband better than her. So if I was going to go over to her house, I was better friends with her husband than I was with her. My family already had an attorney. If I needed to speak to an attorney about probate or any legal matters, I could have called Mr. Chaliff, who was the family attorney. I didn't need to speak to Mr. Wright about it if I wanted an attorney. I wouldn't have gone to him. I would have gone to Jerry Chaliff. So you went to the Wright residence just because you were trying to because you were friends with the family then. Is that correct? They weren't friends of the family, they were friends of mine, and they invited me over and I accepted. I would have rather have been there than the Beverly Hills house. Now, when you got to the Wright residence that day, you told Mrs. Wright that you wanted to speak to a computer expert. Is that correct? Excuse me? When you got to the Wright residence that day before Mr. Wright returned from work, you told Mrs. Wright that you wanted to speak to a computer expert. Is that correct? I don't believe that's correct. No. Okay, you heard the testimony of Mrs. Wright about a conversation about a computer expert? I don't remember her ever saying anything about an expert. I remember her saying that I talked to her about a computer, but I thought that she had put it after Mr. Wright had got it. Okay. I never talked to her about her computer before Mr. Wright got it home. Did you tell Mrs. Wright that you wanted to make sure that there was not a will on the computer? No, that conversation could only have come when Randy testified that he asked us, is there a will? And that's when I said, there is the safe at the house. There is a computer at the house. It could be either of those. And that's the only time the will and computer was brought up. So you're saying that you did not have any conversation with Mrs. Wright about a computer or a will or a computer will after her husband got home. Is that correct? Absolutely. Now, were you concerned about a will on a computer at that point in time? At what point in time, says the court? Mr. Khan says, at the point in time that you were in the right residence. I was never concerned about a will in the computer ever. But Randy brought up the wall. I told him that there may be a new will. Sorry, he brought up the will. And he asked where any of those could be, and I said in the safe. It could be in the computer. I may have said that we have a safety deposit box. What I may have said that we may have a safety deposit box. I don't know. Now, when Mr. Wright arrived home, you and your brother sat down and spoke to Mr. Wright together? I don't remember my brother being there. They testified that he was there, so he was there. I don't remember him being there. You're saying that you don't remember Lyle Menendez being there any time that day? Right. That's what I'm saying. That whole day. Exactly. And then did you ask Mr. Wright if he handled probate? I didn't know what the word probate was. So I could not have asked him if he handled probate. He wasn't probate att- he was not a probate attorney. He was a defense attorney from what he was. So at some point did a conversation come up about a will in a computer? Right. When we were talking about where the will could be, and I said it could be on the computer. Well, how did the conversation about a will start while you were there in Mr. Wright's house? Mr. Wright testified that asked us, do your parents have a will? Do you know if there's any will? And that's how it began. Mr. Wright also testified that he asked prior to that if he handled probate. Didn't he testify to that? No. Mr. Levin says objection argumentative misstates his testimony. The court says overruled. The witness says no, he wouldn't have testified to that. Mr. Conn says, so it's your testimony that this whole business about discussing a will with Mr. Wright was all Mr. Wright's idea. Is that correct? What I am telling you is my memory of it is much more vague than Mr. Wright's, and I am relying on Mr. Wright and Mrs. Wright. Mr. Wright testified that he asked us about the will, and that's what it was when it was brought up. It could be in the computer or in the safe. I am still relying on his testimony. My memory of it is much more vague. Did you rely on Mr. Wright's testimony that Lyle Menendez asked him if he handled probate? God, I keep saying handled. It keeps looking like handed. Hand, yeah. Sorry, handled. Did you rely on Mr. Wright's testimony that Lyle Menendez asked him if he handled probate? I didn't know that he had. I don't believe that he had testified to that. I am surprised at hearing it. Well, you heard it. Is that what you're saying? I'm hearing it from you. Were you able to pay attention during the proceedings? Objection, Your Honor. It's argumentative. Sustained. Mr. Conn says, do you rely upon Mr. Wright's testimony that Lyle told him that he would like him to probate the will? Right. After there was a discussion about the will, he said that he had handled wills before, and so I think he testified that Lyle asked him to that point, can you handle the will? And did you rely upon his testimony for that? I am relying on his testimony for most of what happened the day at his house. How can you rely upon it if it's your recollection that Lyle was not there? Because my recollection isn't that Lyle wasn't there. Therefore, if he's saying that Lyle said this, I have to rely on his representation. I know Randy to be a truthful person, and so if he is saying it happened, then it happened. So you're saying that you simply you don't recall Lyle being there, but you conceded that Lyle may have been there? Oh, I'm saying that Lyle was there if Randy testified that he was there. I mean, sometimes I don't remember things that other people remember. It's just the way. But I am not saying that Randy Wright remembered it wrong. Well, then, did you ever ask Mr. Wright if he handled probate? I didn't know that word probate. I didn't know what that meant. If he said that he handled probate, I may have very well asked him, "Can you handle this?" I don't know. I don't remember that. Now, why do you feel, Mr. Menendez, that if he brought up the issue of probate, that you may very well have asked him, "Will you handle the probate?" Because if he was brought because if he brought up probate and said that he had handled probate before, I just may have said that to him. I don't see any reason why I wouldn't have. So if he says I did, then I did. I don't have an independent memory of it. Now, it's your testimony that you didn't believe you were in the will. Is that correct? Right. I believed that there was a strong possibility that I was not in the will. A strong possibility? Yes. But you recognize the possibility that you were in the will? Is that what you're saying? My father told me that I wasn't. He said that he was changing the will. He just believed that the will was changed. Obviously, there was a possibility that I was in it. But so what you're saying is you never ruled out the possibility that you were in the will, correct? Right. The court says, "All right, let's take our recess until 1:30." So they're going to go on their lunch break, and we will return for their afternoon session on Thursday. So, thank you guys so much for watching. I know this is long and sometimes it's boring and it drags on and these questions are just ugh. But it's important to read this stuff because they tried to hide it from us. They didn't give us cameras in this case, and we need to watch it or listen to it or whatever just to keep eyes on it because even though it's an old case, we need to learn from it and remember what they did to these brothers and fight for their freedom for now that we know what the justice system did to them. All right. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you Thursday in the next trial transcripts exposed. Bye, guys. Take care. That's the end of this trial transcripts exposed. Thanks for following along with me. Like if you want more, subscribe, and let me know what you think in the comments below. See you next time.